Mm-hmm. Fireside Tales. Hello, I'm Merlin, Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell weird tales within tales. And I drink coffee. I drink coffee from my skull mug, because I'm a deadhead. Do you guys know what a deadhead is? Deadhead is somebody who really likes the band The Grateful Dead. I happen to be one of those somebodies. But the Grateful Dead is not just a band. They got their name from a story in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it's a Buddhist text, and the Buddhists believe in reincarnation. And it's a story about reincarnation. And so this is a show about reincarnation. So I tell the story of the Grateful Dead here at Fireside Tales every week, because it's a story about reincarnation. And this is a show about reincarnation. So obviously I'm a firm believer in reincarnation. And I have been meditating since I was about 15 or 16. And when I was still in my teens, I, in meditation, received a key. I did a meditation on the High Priestess card in the Tarot deck. And she gave me a key, and she told me it was for the Akashic Records. And then I had already met my spirit guides in another meditation. And so with my spirit guides and my key, I went to the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records is an ancient library. It's a meditative library where every soul has a book. And in the book is a record of who, where, and when your soul has been. So it's like a record of the reincarnations a soul has undergone. Now, there's just a lot of people who don't understand reincarnation. And so I wanted to make this show to help humanity understand reincarnation. So, like I said, every week here at Fireside Tales, I tell the story of the Grateful Dead. And I tell it how it should be told, from a deadhead by a fire, as it was told to me. So I'm going to do that now. Once, long, long ago, there was a traveler. It was so long ago that the traveler traveled by foot. And one day, while she was traveling along, she happened upon a little village. As she got closer to the village, she noticed a crowd in the center of the village. As she got closer still, she noticed a dead body among the crowd in the village. And as she got closer still, she noticed that the people were arguing quite literally over this dead man's body. They were arguing directly over him, but then also over who was going to pay the dead man's debts and who was going to bury him and who was going to pay for that. And the traveler thought this was all very disrespectful to the dead man laying there, who she seemed to be the only one to notice. And she stopped the people and she said, I will pay his debts. I will pay for a proper burial. And she did. She paid his debts. She paid for a proper burial. She prayed over his grave. And she traveled on. And then one day, decades later, the traveler, the same one from the beginning of the story, happened upon a life or death situation where out of nowhere, a stranger just scooped her up and saved her life. She said, thank you. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you save my life? And the stranger simply said, I am the Grateful Dead. It was the dead man, reincarnated. Some people think that it's a corpse that saves her at the end. Some people think it's a zombie, but that's silly. Corpses and zombies don't save lives. It's not really a thing, is it? I don't think ever. I mean, not in any story. Not. I mean, corpses do not save lives. It's a reincarnated person. The dead man laying there with the debts reincarnated into a tiny baby body, a new body. You don't reincarnate and take your old body with you. You reincarnate. Your soul reincarnates into a new baby body. And this man grew up into an adult and still remembered the kind deeds of the traveler and wanted to repay her when he had a chance. He had a chance and he saved her life. And he repaid her for having saved his death, basically. I think there's definitely something to praying over a dead person's body for their soul, praying for their soul. So it's about reincarnation. My book in the Akashic Records is really big and old and dusty. And each life seems to be linked by these different threads. And one of my threads is fire and fire safety. Um, because it was life, basically. I mean, it was your heat, your cooking, your everything back in the day. You wanted to make sure that you didn't burn down your house or your neighbor's house or your village. So fire safety was really important back then, but it's still important today. I live in California, and it's still important. So you want to make sure when you do have a fire that you're safe about it. I have water in the kettle up on top, and I have water in my cup here, and I have water around the corner with my sprayer, even when it's in my stove. But if you have a fire outside, you want to make sure that you dig your pit in a place where there's no overhanging branches. You know, you want to make sure it's clear, because flames lick up. And then you want to dig a pit, and then you want to line that pit with stones, and then you want to line that with stones. And then you want to make sure you have a shovel, and you have access to at least a bucket of water or a sprayer, you know, that's linked to a well or whatever. And you need some loose dirt or sand, because that actually puts out a fire way better than water, and wasting water is not always useful. So fire and fire safety are two of my threads. Meditation is another one of my threads. And before I meditate, two of my other threads are smudging and grounding. And this is a smudge stick. It's sage, dried sage in a bundle. And when you burn sage, the smoke is cleansing. It's cleansing to your house, your energies, your bodily energies. This is a way to cleanse your aura. Before I meditate, before I do readings, I read tarot and runes. Before I do rituals, in order to get your most positive reading, your most positive results from your meditation, your most positive results from your rituals, if you cleanse your aura and you ground, you'll get the most positive results available in the multiverse. So that's smudging. And then grounding is for cleansing your inside energies. So it's a breathing exercise, and you want to blow out all of your negative. Breathe in positive, thinking uber positive thought. And then breathe out positive, so that you're breathing in and out positive energy. So another one of my threads is stones, for a variety of different reasons. stars, and being a psychic medium. I've been a psychic medium in every one of my lives, even if I didn't understand it. Um, and this life is no exception. And I've spent a lot of time in the spirit realm. I don't really like humans as much as I used to. Um, sort of ashamed to be human often. We're so destructive and selfish, and it just, I don't know. I like spirits better. People are weird about ghosts and, oh, I'm afraid of ghosts. I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm afraid of the living people. They're far more destructive and mean. Anywho, so I don't really buy into fear at all, to be honest. I don't. Um, I think fear stinks. My my dog, Jazzy, she died in my arms, and ever since I've been able to smell fear like a dog, which is weird, but it has an odor. It has a scent. It's like she gave me this gift. She left it for me to use, and I do. It's helpful to know when people are afraid of you. Um, I never thought anybody would be afraid of me, but I guess it happens. Anyway, so spending a lot of time in the spiritual realm, the spirits all say the same thing about reincarnation, and they say that it happens when someone is murdered. And like, you get to come back and try again if you get murdered. And since my book is so big and old and dusty, I've apparently been murdered a lot. So, my book in the Akashic Records, like I said, it's big and old and dusty, but it also has this weird watermark. It's kind of down the center. The lives in the book prior to the watermark are all light and dry and sandy, and each one of those lives is extremely long, like unnaturally, unusually long, like thousands of years long, which is weird, but it matches up with the King's List. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's carved into stone in a couple of different languages, and it lists kings and pharaohs and stuff, and they have these extraordinarily long lives, and people think it's just a weird way of math, doing ancient math or something. I don't think so. I think that people just used to live longer before the Great Flood, which I think is what my watermark marks. And then after the Great Flood, or after my watermark in my book, everything is dark and wet and muddy, and my lives are much shorter. Like they, barely make it to their 30s, most of the lives in the darker, wet, muddy part of my book. And those are the more modern lives, which makes sense because, people don't live thousands of years anymore. But I do believe that they did once. And at least I did once. So this season, we've been discussing just one life in my book. And that life takes us to ancient Egypt around 1505 BC. And it's the life of Hatshepsut that we've been discussing. So According to my book, I was Hatshepsut, who was one of the only female pharaohs in ancient Egypt, and therefore there's a lot of stuff about her. Um, and she made sure that she left things carved into stone so people would know who she was and that she was a she. Her stepson or stepbrother, I think he was her stepbrother, but all of the documentaries and stuff says he was her stepson, but he was her successor and I believe her murderer. He went around trying to erase her. There's some of her things that her pronouns were chipped off of, and they changed. Basic, I think it was just basically her pronouns. So she was a she, and today we're going to discuss her higher education and what I know about her. So she learned a great deal from the priest kings. I've mentioned them. They were all both priests and kings, and they were like the pharaoh's underlings, but not really. Like the pharaoh's cabinet, I guess you could call them. They they ruled over different regions, but they answered to the pharaoh, basically. Um, but they taught Hatshepsut how to read and write and all about ritual and uh, her father taught her about governing, but most people would say that education from the priest kings was her higher education. But I would say that learning meditation and astral travel and interdimensional travel from my mother was, to me, my higher education. And commonly among her people, that was a higher education. That was something, I mean, not a lot of people knew how to read and write at this time, but not a lot of people aspired to read and write at this time. A lot of people at this time did aspire to learn meditation and astral travel and interdimensional travel. And a lot of them didn't learn it because they didn't have a mother who descended from pharaohs. Hatshepsut did, and she learned from her mother out in the desert at night about the stars and about astral travel and interdimensional travel and, of course, meditation. She learned smudging and grounding. The priest kings did teach her a lot about stones and moving stones and carving stones. But like I said, this was more important to these people. She also learned music from her mother, which was also very important to this culture. Well, she learned about stones from the priest kings. She learned from the priest kings that she could use her music to move stones easier. I've spoken about it before on the show, but in this life, in this body, I was moving some stones and I really hurt myself here on the studio property. And I wanted to finish what I was doing with the stones, and I meditated and I had the priest kings come to me in my meditation, and they told me that if I hum and lift stones, that they'll be lighter. And I was like, okay. So I went out and I tried it, and it worked. It worked. And I finished my project and I didn't hurt myself. So if you don't believe me, go out and find a stone that's hard for you to lift, but that you could lift, and then try lifting it instead while humming anything. And you'll see how much different it is. Particularly limestone. I have a lot of it in the yard here, and they had a lot of it in the desert there. So, yeah, priest kings. And I guess that's higher knowledge, but at the time, it wasn't really considered a higher education. It was like something everybody knew at that time. Where today higher education is more higher knowledge. For them, back then, they believed the more spiritual, the more higher learning it was. Like raising the spirits. And we believe in more higher knowledge, not necessarily higher learning, higher knowledge that's written in a book, that you learn from a book. And not only did they not have very many books back then, but people didn't read and write yet much. So books and book learning was sort of, I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't how we look at education today. You know, we always look to books for education, or now we look to computers and different programs and different websites, but back then, and this is 1505 ancient Egypt BC, and they just thought that higher education was something you did with your spirit rather than with your brain. In fact, when they embalmed people, which the ancient Egyptians did, they didn't think very much of the brain, because they just threw that away. They threw it out. They saved other organs and put them in boxes and stuff and saved them, mummified them. But the brain, they just took it out and threw it away. You won't be needing that in the afterlife. They didn't really think very highly of the brain. I've quoted before Emo Phillips in discussing this, and he's a comedian, or was a comedian back in the day, and he's a weird little man, but he said that I used to think that my brain was the most amazing part of my body, and then I thought, well, look what's telling me now. It's a good point, because, you know, you, as a human in a body, you see things and you understand things through your human lens, right? But your spirit sees and understands things through a spiritual lens, which is very different. But we are only spirits in a meat suit. I never really understood like mausoleums and all the extravagant stuff that people pay for funerals, because it's just a vehicle. Like, this body it's just a car for my soul. I didn't build a temple or a mausoleum or anything to my 77 Le Mans when it died. So, excuse me. I don't understand why we have such a hard time when these vehicles die. I guess it's because not everyone gets reincarnated. You know, not everyone gets murdered. And, you know, it's an unfortunate series of events that leads to a person getting murdered. So it it hasn't been a walk in the park. Let's just say that. It's difficult to really capture with words things of spirit, right? It's because words are human. I mean, my spirit communicates in words with other spirits, but they're not allowed. So are they words? Do we know? Are we certain they're words? Or is it just an emotion or a feeling or a understanding or a filter? Does your spirit have filters? And the things that I learned from my mother out there in the desert have stayed with me. And I still use the pyramids in the way that she taught me. And that we used them as like weights. You know when you get a balloon and it comes with one of those weights, so you have the weight and the string. Well, we used to have a metaphysical string that linked us to the pyramids, so that when we went astral traveling or interdimensionally traveling, we could come back to the pyramids. And that was how we did things. I still use them, like I said, the pyramids as a jumping off point, sometimes as an arrival point. They're easy to find from anywhere in the multiverse, and they exist in every dimension in the multiverse, which is the coolest thing about them. I also believe that they're not pyramids, that they're like diamonds. Like there's another pyramid underground below them. I'm pretty sure. And they were never tombs, by the way. I think they were power plants. And I think that the ancient Egyptians had electricity and moved rocks very easily by singing. But, you know, the higher knowledge, the higher learning, the higher education of the ancient Egyptians was definitely in the spiritual realm. What's the word I'm looking for? It was just more spiritual than it was physical. Hatshepsut didn't learn any of the embalming or mummification or any of that. That was specific to, I believe, the priest kings. So that wasn't anything she got involved in. But yeah, they had way more respect for the spirit than for anything physical. And they followed the 42 confessions of Ma'at. And they worshipped females. Where that's sort of been taken out of the history, because they have all these gods everywhere. But even the females, like Hatshepsut, wore ceremonial beards. So, and then when they died, people chiseled off their pronouns. So, I mean, Hatshepsut was lucky in that she had a great architect who helped her tell her story in stone. And I can't help but think that there had to have been other women like her that ruled or were priest kings or what have you, who were erased from history by their predecessor or their the one who came after them. Their replacement. And in the case of Hatshepsut, she was murdered for her throne. So, you know, how many others were murdered? I mean, I'm sure she wasn't the only one. So I'm sure she wasn't the only one that was erased from history via erasing her pronouns. And, if she appears, or if they appear uh, in a ceremonial beard and statuary, how are you really going to know the difference? I mean, I'm sure Hatshepsut went out of her way to make sure people understood that she was a female, because there had been other instances of other females being erased. And she didn't want that to happen to her. You don't just have that kind of paranoia out of nowhere for no reason. And she had it, at the end there. And you can tell by the different things that she built and the different things that each building and monument said about her reign. Some people say that it was propaganda. I think it was just telling the truth and carving it in the stone so everyone knew what that truth was, because everyone was going to try to make it like she didn't exist. And she knew that that was what was going to happen. And not everyone, not every female who was powerful at that time was Pharaoh. And if you're Pharaoh, sure, you can erect monuments and temples and stuff. But if you're just a regular woman who did amazing things, which I'm sure there were, you were likely erased or just not talked about, because the fragile little egos of the men following were not prepared to handle female rule or female power, for that matter. But it's been a part of our planet. It was originally part of our planet, and it will be again. It never stopped being part of our planet. Our planet is female. And she is my God. And earth worship is another one of my threads. And she always has been. She's my goddess. So the 42 confessions to Ma'at. Ma'at was a goddess that the ancient Egyptians worshipped. And she is supposedly the one you meet when you do die. And you have to explain to her why you did all the things that you did. And basically, you just have to confess that you didn't do certain things, or via that confess the different things you did wrong according to her 42 confessions. All of the 10 commandments are in the 42 confessions of Ma'at, and they obviously have more than 10. So the 10 commandments were probably just a spin-off of the 42 confessions of Ma'at, and translated into whatever language Moses was speaking. Perhaps he only got the last 10. Perhaps it was Ma'at that gave him those things. Some people think that the Pharaoh who ruled before Hatshepsut's father might have been Moses, because his name was Hotep Moses. And if they just dropped the Hotep and he went on, I mean, he came from Egypt, supposedly freed the slaves, and went to Jericho. Well, they wandered the desert and the forest for, what was it, 30 years or something, and then they went to Jericho. And they supposedly had the Ark of the Covenant, and that was what beat down the walls of Jericho. And the Ark of the Covenant, in the Bible, they give the specific dimensions of the Ark. And it's the same exact dimensions as these cement things that they thought were sarcophagi in the Great Pyramid. It's the same dimensions. Anywho, another thing I do every week here at Fireside Tales is sing David Crosby's Deja Vu. And so I'm going to do that now. Without further ado. It's one of the only songs I know about reincarnation, and it well, I wrote a song called Reincarnation, and I played it a couple times on the show, and then David Crosby died. And so now I feel the need to pay homage to David. So I've got my 12 string, which he used to play it on, and Deja Vu. If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before on another time around the wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before. And you know, it makes me wonder what's going on. sound. Mm, mm, mm. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? La 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 da da da. We have all been here before. 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 Well, that's all for me today. Thanks for watching. And listening. Have a weird and wonderful weekend. A Mililli Studios production.